Disastrous propaganda affecting the Yezidi community. It is more profitable to invest $1 in the press than $10 in weapons. Weapons are unlikely to speak at all, and the press does not close its mouth from morning to night. Richard Milhous Nixon. Propaganda is often understood only as political, or ideological propaganda carried out with the aim of forming a certain political worldview among the masses. Political propaganda can be considered as a systematic influence on the consciousness of individuals, groups, society as a whole to achieve a certain result in the field of political action. It is unlikely that political propaganda can benefit society. Unfortunately, the Yezidi people are also subjected to political, ideological and even religious propaganda. Propaganda against the Yezidi people has been going on for more than a century. As we know, the Yezidi people were often called devil worshippers. To this day, some continue to call the Yezidis that. Thanks to this religious propaganda, the Yezidi people were persecuted from their native lands, to slavery and to genocide. In the USSR, due to the large geopolitical processes in the Middle East, they decided that it was more profitable to call the Yezidis Kurds. This led to the fact that a lot of Yezidis, following the instructions of the Soviet leadership in the Soviet space, began to call themselves Kurds. The workers of the Communist Party of the USSR conducted very thorough work, which led to the fact that even the Yezidis, who were appointed to the Kurds, began to prove and call themselves Yezidi Kurds, which is fundamentally a destructive concept for the Yezidi people. It was from the moment when they introduced into the conceptual apparatus of the whole Yezidi people that they could and should be Kurds by nationality and Yezidis by faith that the active destruction of not only the traditional way of life, religious worldview, but also the mental perception of the existence of the entire Yezidi people began. Currently, the term propaganda is increasingly associated with the media. With the development of journalism, with the beginning of the development of print media, and subsequently the creation of online publications, the press began to be considered a serious lever of influence on the consciousness of the audience. Recently, even the press has begun to give way in the propaganda race and social networks have become the leaders. Bots, internet trolls, and even an ordinary grandmother with a smartphone are becoming propaganda mechanisms. I would like to pay a little attention to the mechanisms methods of propaganda. Sociologist and psychologist Sorochenko describes this well in his book Encyclopedia of Propaganda Methods. Below I provide two methods of propaganda most used against the Yezidi people. First, everyday story. This technique allows the media to maintain the illusion of objective coverage of events, but at the same time, it devalues the significance of what happened, creates an idea of this event among the mass audience as something insignificant, not worth much attention and, moreover, public evaluation. That is, serious and terrible incidents are reported by journalists quite calmly and matter-of-factly. If you need to tame people to violence, blood, murder, atrocities of all kinds, then a handsome TV presenter with a calm face and an even voice, as if casually, informs you daily about the most serious atrocities. Second, rewriting history. The name of the method is telling. In order to form a certain opinion among society, historical events are simply stated incorrectly. This method is effective when it is required to gradually change the opinion of a certain individual mass. Unfortunately, it is the Yezidi people who are a separate mass today. Every Yezidi is often faced with the fact that he hears a different history of the origin of his people, religion, language, and so on. The Yezidis, as a small people, think that this propaganda is bypassed, but in fact it is not so. Huge amounts of money are invested in propaganda against the Yezidis and it is working. If we ask every third Yezidi who he is, a Yezidi or a Kurd, he will think and it will be difficult for him to answer. I would like to note that, unfortunately, sometimes this malicious propaganda against the Yezidi people comes from some representatives of the Yezidi people. You will ask the question, why are the mechanisms of malicious propaganda against the Yezidi people working so successfully? The answer is very simple, but it has a big root of the problem, and the problem, in turn, is that the Yezidis have become a passive, degraded ethnic group, who look at how slowly but surely the ancient Yezidi people will end up in the annals of rewritten history.